2009 actually as a component fund of the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven. It was called the Prosperity Fund. And a lot of people still use that. They still think that we are the Prosperity Fund. But over, I think, maybe in 2010 or 11? 2011, after working with several consultants, we evolved into our own community foundation. So we are we are actually literally a foundation in theory that is just like the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven, the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, Fairfield Community Foundation, Waterbury Foundation, whatever community foundation you can think of, we are that. The difference between us and them is that we are laser focused on those things that are good for the Black community. That's in our mission. That's where all of our funds and all of our efforts and all of our resources go, to the Black community. Now, our focus is on health, economics, and education. That's our focus. You may have an idea on how to help the community, and you can invest in our foundation through your own creation of an endowment in order to improve the conditions of our community. But 2011, we started our journey as our own foundation with the help of Kathy Graves. We actually received a $300,000 grant from the Kellogg Foundation to help bring our idea into fruition. We finished up that grant, I think, last year, April.
This year, April.
This year, April, we completed that grant. The Community Foundation for Greater New Haven supports us through grants. Also, we have our support from the Graustein Memorial Fund, where Mr. David Addams is the executive director, and he's our keynote for this evening. He's been supporting us as well, and thank you very much. And we also get gifts from those generous people out there who believe in our mission. That's all I will say about the history. Unless I forgot anything.
No, that was good for tonight.
I do want to just acknowledge that some of the people that may not be here, Dr. Tamiko Jackson, Stacy Risco, Frenchie Risco, Carol Reed, Ken Benton, Quintaris MacArthur, Nancy Hill, my wife, Liz Hilton. These people actually were part of the Prosperity Fund, and which actually helped to create the vision for the Prosperity Foundation. So I always like to acknowledge the history and keep in mind those people who kind of laid the groundwork for this foundation to come into existence. So thank you.
Wonderful.
A lot of times you get bogged down in the hard work. You get so focused on what are the issues that you're trying to resolve, what are some of the accomplishments you're trying to achieve, that you forget to look back and be thankful, be grateful, but also be proud of what you've been able to accomplish. And so I'd like to take a few brief moments to share with you the success that we truly have been able to achieve over the history that Howard has outlined for you. And when I think of the success of the Prosperity Foundation, you have to forgive me, I'm the treasurer of the organization. I'm like a numbers guy. So it's always about the money to me. But there are other aspects of success as well. Fortunately, we have been very successful financially. When I look back at the growth of the Prosperity Foundation in the 3+ years that I've been involved, I think about the amount of dollars that we're able to invest into the community. I think in our first year of grant making, which was 2 years ago, we put about a little over $20,000 into the community across a variety of organizations. We were very, very pleased with that, very proud, and the impact that that money made in the community was very significant for the small dollars that it represented. Last year, we were able to grow that investment from a little over $20,000 to about $35,000 that we were able to invest into the community. So growing that commitment, growing that presence, growing that impact year by year. And thanks to a very timely, a very thoughtful support, a very needed support by David Addams and the Graustein Memorial Foundation, we should be able to take that impact in 2018 grant making to something approaching and not exceeding $50,000. So year over year over year, we're brick by brick growing the organization, growing stride by stride. You don't become a multi-million-dollar entity overnight, but we're on the path. Our trajectory is true, and we're growing the right way in a measured, methodical sense, thanks to the support of the advocates that have been attracted to our vision and who've been able to be a part of what we're doing. Aside from the investment in the community, which is a piece that I'm truly grateful for and passionate about, there's another aspect of what the Prosperity Foundation does, which is act as fiduciary, act as steward to the community's money, where we have component funds that are invested, deposited with the Prosperity Foundation, but the individuals who establish those funds determine how those monies are invested. And I'm pleased to announce, very proud and pleased to announce that we have 15 component funds, all of which are named around the room. So each of these funds that you see around the room is a different fund that an individual, some of you are in the room, has established with the Prosperity Foundation. And critically important, we achieved a milestone only 2 weeks ago where these 15 component funds represent assets under management at the Prosperity Foundation of over $100,000. So, when we look at our strategic plan as the Prosperity Foundation, and we had our initial board retreat 2 or 3 years ago, I think Larry Conaway is in the room somewhere. Larry is kind of our aggressive, challenging go-getter. Larry said, we want to have $500,000 under management in year 2. I say, Larry, we don't have 500,000 yet, but we're on our way, and we're just really excited, really excited to achieve that important milestone for us. So, I would give those funds just one more round of applause. And then the final point of success, which I'll point to, that is not really in the math, but is critically important to the viability of an organization, is our ability to really build sound infrastructure. One of the things we've been focusing on as a group is surrounding ourselves with the talent, with the professionals that will allow us to operate. We spent, in the last, about a month ago, we had a 2-day off-site retreat with the board of directors, as well as Orcella, who's our executive director. And we really were able to talk through what are the issues a growing organization faces. How can we be deliberate and thoughtful about the decisions that we're making as we're growing? Because when you're growing, it's fine to say numbers of things, but your responsibility is also growing, right? The importance of credibility and accountability, integrity become more important in your public brand. And so thinking through those aspects of our organization is something we've spent a lot of time on in the last month. And I'm very proud to say that we're making great progress under the leadership of Orcella, who I want to give a round of applause. And thank you. But I just want to give you folks a sense for the work that we're doing, the hard work that we're doing. And people always ask me to say this, although I don't really like saying it, but maybe it's important. The board of directors does not take any monetary or financial gain in this organization. We do not extract any salaries. We do not extract any fees. We are not enriched in any way. This is 100% philanthropic activity by all members of the board of directors. We do not get paid in any way from doing this work. We believe in the community. We believe in this organization's ability to solve critical issues. And that's why you see the commitment that we have all made and given to this organization. And with that, I will introduce the illustrious Kathy Graves.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
I have the honor of introducing Mr. David Addams, and I know you've read his bio over and over again, and I'm just going to highlight just a few things. David Addams is Executive Director of the William Caspar Graustein Memorial Fund. Previously, he was Executive Director of the Oliver Scholars Program in New York City. He spent his early career as an attorney, a specialist in negotiation, mediation, and conflict resolution. He has spent the last 20 years, he's served in various nonprofit management positions, and one that holds dear to my heart, he was Vice President of the New York City Urban League, and he was a member of the advisory board of the Urban League, and I spent several years at the Urban League of Southern Connecticut as treasurer. So that's near and dear to me. He served as a visiting distinguished professor of public policy and administration at Brooklyn College, and as an adjunct professor of public policy and law at Brooklyn College Graduate Center, City College of New York City, and for legal education and City University of New York Law in Queens. Oh my God, David. David is a native of the South Side of Chicago. He is married to Zanetta from Queens, New York, and Barbados, and a father to Jelani, Tariq, and Khalil. Now, there's one other thing that's very important about David. Well, actually, a couple things. David loves jazz. He loves the city. And he is passionate about racial equality. Mr. David Addams.
Thank you. Good evening. Good evening. It's a very, some slightly embarrassing introduction. You know, whenever people start listing all the places I work, you know, I always think about the kids who ask their dad, can't you keep a job? But it's a real honor to be here, and really appreciated the opportunity to start with the history. You know, I really want to say thank you in particular to Howard for getting this ball rolling, because it's really important. And, you know, one of the things I've noticed about Howard, I've had a chance to observe him a few times at TPF and other events, he's actually quite modest and does not lift up all of the history. And, you know, one of the things I think that it's important to remember about history is you never know you're making it when you're making it. And I was in Baltimore last year, right? At a conference, national conference of the Association of Black Foundation Executives. And they come together once a year to examine both the life of African Americans who work in the sector, but also, more importantly, the impact of philanthropy on the African American community. And at that particular conference, they chose to lift up a couple of examples of really key initiatives happening in the country that are sort of leading the way and having a huge impact. And the Prosperity Foundation was one of those initiatives being profiled at that national conference. And that's not by accident, because the Association of Black Foundation Executives have had an opportunity to see what's happening from coast to coast, from community to community, and to understand, you know, what's been working and what hasn't, and really understand how important it is to lift up those things that have the most promise. And so I want you to understand that you are a part of history being made. The Prosperity Foundation is making history. And it's a really important thing to remember, not just because it's historic, but because it's going to really bring about the changes that, frankly, we've been looking for a long time. I see the Prosperity Foundation very much in the tradition of the Freedmen's Bank, okay? that was supposed to hold a lot of promise and potential for us as a people. And I think we can go over the history of all the different initiatives. And this is the point in the speech where the speechwriter is supposed to then sort of have this pithy quote, right? That would then lift that up. And I think we all sort of have our own favorite sort of quote, that one line from Black history. I know mind is a terrible thing to waste. We all know that, right? And there's a reason we all know that one. Because that organization, the United Negro College Fund, was built and resourced to last. And that's what this conversation is about tonight. How do we build to last so that we can build to success? As the former executive director of Associated Black Charities in New York City, I'm acutely focused on the importance of creating vehicles manifesting the will and interests of African Americans on our own behalf. And that's really the significance and the power of being able to be here with you. Because there's lots of organizations and lots of efforts and initiatives, but very few that really have, as Howard said, that laser focus about why we're here and where we're going. And so I really am really honored to be able to be here and to be a part of this kind of conversation. History is clear that the greatest results flow from what a community can do for itself. I'm going to say that again. History is very clear that the greatest results flow from what a community can do for itself. And when we examine the needs of the African American community, there's no shortcut that will work to resolve the centuries of disenfranchisement, divestment, and discrimination that have been experienced by African Americans. Long journeys, however, therefore require resources, planning, and strategy. Long-term strategy in the nonprofit sector requires that we build assets, which can be the bridge to the future in good times and the bridge over troubled waters in hard times. The Prosperity Foundation and Associated Black Charities, where I once worked, have something in common: a grant from the Kellogg Foundation. I was able, in that position, to organize a national collaboration of similar organizations 20 years ago into a project collaboration team to receive one of the earliest grants from Kellogg in their Philanthropy and Communities of Color portfolio. National collaborations in the Hispanic, Asian, Native American, and African American communities were funded to explore what it takes to promote philanthropy in communities of color. Now, I was always really intrigued with this project because, as studies have shown, Emmett Carson being the scholar we were trying to remember earlier, who really, I think, pioneered some of that research, people of color have historically been proportionately more philanthropic than anyone, and have done so with less. However, that philanthropy was funneled through trusted community institutions and did not look like what the majority community calls philanthropy. More often than not, that giving also turned right back around and went to immediate needs in the community, like food assistance, clothing, emergency shelter, etc. As a result, there's been very little opportunity to grow assets for troubled times, since it looked like we were living through troubled times all the time. I remember in my last position before this one at the Oliver Scholars Program, living through the national recession. And when it's a recession for America, it's what for the rest of us, right? And wondering if we were going to make it, truly wondering. And I had to prepare this report for my board about our prospects and did some comparative research of my peer organizations. I don't like to call them competitors, they're peer organizations. And they all had, whatever you wanted to call it, reserve funds, endowments, whatever the case may be, so they could ride that period out. And I ended up, going into an organization that had no reserve fund, that had no endowment, that, was really on the ropes, to be honest. And, being resourceful, I came up with a whole variety of plans. I have old roommate of mine who's currently the first African-American chair of the U.S. Fencing Association. He went to Wharton Business School. So I wrote up this plan, I sent it to him, I was like, think this will fly? He's like, yeah, it's pretty good for someone that didn't go to business school. And so I took it to my board. And they got worried because they were like, oh, wait, no, we didn't hire you to do that. We hired you to do this other thing. It's like, well, I'm looking for the money to do that. And so they said, well, oh, okay, we get it. Relax, stay focused. And they created an endowment fund. That organization is now twice the size that it was when I left, because they understood I couldn't do what I was supposed to do if they weren't doing what they were supposed to do to make that happen. Now, churches in the black community were the first to show the power of growing assets for long-term projects and needs. And that is what we would need to do more of, frankly, in the future, as government is retrenching by shrinking the social safety net, which is available to needy communities. As Executive Director of Associated Black Charities, I attempted to do that asset building as well in that conversation with Kellogg. Upon receiving the grant for Philanthropy in Communities of Color, all the recipient organizations were invited to a meeting in Battle Creek, Michigan, where Kellogg is headquartered, to talk about the grant and its implications with each other and with Kellogg. As we were approaching the end of our time in Battle Creek, we were asked whether there were any additional ideas or thoughts that we wanted to share. And I offered that, as generous as our grant was from Kellogg, promoting long-term goals like philanthropy in communities of color required assets, like shares of stock, which Kellogg could offer. They're sitting on it. Now, initially, our Kellogg program officer assumed I was ending the meeting with a really good joke, and eventually understood how serious I was. Because it really does not matter what little bits of income that we can get from time to time. It really is important that we be able to have that asset that can begin to throw off some income for us as well. And, you know, I wasn't expecting them to like walk into the vault and hand me shares right then and there. I mean, it was really about kind of trying to raise the idea of applying the same standard of philanthropy to us that they did to themselves. So if they wanted to talk about philanthropy in communities of color, do it the way that they do it. They sit on assets. They invest assets. The assets produce income, and then they use the income to apply to various needs. Both the ideas of equity and equality required as much. Treat us the same way and treat us fairly. Now, we have, come to a point where various versions of that conversation have happened. I don't know how many of you remember Mr. Foreman going into the church back in the 1960s, talking about reparations that needed to be created to put that money in a fund so that we could take care of those needs for ourselves. So this is nothing new. This is not innovative, but I'm crystal clear that we will need to build our own assets in order to fund our needs as a community. And so I'm really honored to be here to have this particular conversation with you and to really commend the Prosperity Foundation for having that focus and for understanding just how important it is to lift up each of these funds to the extent to which they can be the bedrocks for what goes forward as an organization. Kellogg, Motorola, Honda, Gates, Ford, Rockefeller Foundation, none of them are going to build our endowments for us. They're not going to do it. I tried. All of these foundations are able to function in perpetuity because of their endowments and their asset management. Now, as social dynamics in America and Connecticut get more dire, all of this will require even more collaboration, communication, and strategic planning than ever. Innovative projects and agreements allowing mutual fundraising and economic development to flourish as tools for social welfare will become even more necessary. Our state and federal governments, regardless of party, are sending a clear message very different from the one that Senator Kerry sent when he was running for president, help is not on the way. Let's be clear. Help is not on the way. I think they've made it as clear as they possibly can. And so we're going to have to do that, to a great extent ourselves. So as the help is being withdrawn and the conditions are really getting even worse, it's going to need to trigger that help that we need from our own efforts. So let us pull together in the spirit of Harambe and create a year-round Ujima and Ujamaa of cooperative economics and collective work and responsibility, not just during the celebration of Kwanzaa once a year. The well-being of our children and our elders is our responsibility year-round. One of these responsibilities is to build, sustain, and grow institutions like the Prosperity Foundation, as we never have enough tools and resources on hand to do our work. As a part of that responsibility, let us also support the growth and development of our community's prosperity that fuels our own philanthropy. Our community needs businesses, our people need jobs, and our families must have the wherewithal to raise children and secure our future independent of the whims, wishes, and trends of other communities. All successful communities live by this code, and we must follow such universal principles if we wish to succeed. Thanks again to the founders and leaders and supporters of the Prosperity Foundation for seeing the importance of this dynamic. Thank you very much.
Wow. Wow is all I have. I was trying to take notes, and I even was trying to tweet what you were saying, but there are some times when you just have to sit and allow the atmosphere to speak to you instead of engage. And thank you so much. You hit everything. Oh, there's a question.
All right.
Will the copy of that be available?
Sure.
Where?
Sure.
And when?
Well, yes.
We are recording this evening, and so our website is on your program, www.tpfct.org. We have a YouTube channel where we will eventually be uploading it as soon as our producer has it available. Yes, that message needs to go forth. Feels like you have been in all of our board meetings. And it was perfect. And so I am honored to now bring up our Vice President, Mr. Larry Conaway.
David, after that, thank you. After that, I don't have a lot to say, but I do have something to say. And my role is how do you get involved with the Prosperity Foundation? Before I go into that, I just want to I want to say a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, when I started my fund, I had no idea that it was going to grow the way it did. And then 6 other individuals that I talked to followed, my lead and the board's lead, and that was the Kareem Fund, the Kiyama Movement Fund, the Lucinio Fund, the Mary Robinson Fund, the Spirit of Hartford Fund, St. Andrews Fund. And so that was 7 that we were at, and I think that by the end of the year we easily could get to 20 or 25, and that's a challenge I want to put out to this group, and then you talk to your circle, and they can talk to their circle, and they can talk to their circle, because we still have a lot of time. It's real easy to get involved. You could talk to any of those individuals who have funds and talk about how they got started. If you know any of those individuals, you could talk to our board, and all our board members are here tonight. All of them have spoken. And Nancy Hill is here too, so you could talk to any of the board members. There's lots of There's lots of information flowing around in those green packets that tells you all about the board. It tells you about who the board is. It tells you about TPF. It tells you about giving opportunities, about the Prosperity Foundation. Make sure you walk up with one of those. I see a lot of people that have been here before, so I know it's on your mind. So let me tell you how I got involved. About 13 or 14 years ago, I got involved with the Community Foundation, and we set up a fund. It was with Michael Jefferson and myself and Barbara Tinney, Amy Smith. A bunch of us set up this fund called the Male Involvement Fund. That fund is just taken off over the last 13 years. So then when after Howard and his founding fathers, they got started and they started going to the foundation, his wife approached me and asked me, that I want to get involved, and I started a fund. I started from my mother first. I started my mother's name, Lillian Conaway's name first, and then I just named it the Conaway Fund for the family. Then I didn't realize how simple it was to start a fund. I took a couple $100, and I built the fund, and the fund is well over $10,000 now. But I took $200 and put a little bit in at a time, and then I took that model. And went to a friend of mine. He did it. I went back to Michael Jefferson, my other friend. He started the Kiama Fund. I went to Claudette Thorpe. She started the Mary Robinson Fund. Went to St. Andrew's Church. They started St. Andrew's Fund. So on and so forth. And that's just how it's done. It's real simple. And if you, it takes $5,000 to be endowed. I started at $200. I got endowed about 6 or 7 months later. Normally, the bigger foundation, it takes about $10,000 to be endowed. So we're half that. So let me just go back. You could check out our website. You can call us on that phone number. You could contact the board members. You could follow up on the printed materials. You could follow us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, it's just that simple. And I want to close by saying that everybody, if you don't want to start a fund and you want to contribute to the organization, everybody, we have donor cards tonight. And you could fill out, it's called a Prosperity Foundation donor card. And you could put as much as $5 or $5,000 in there. We'll take, anything, because what we're doing is we're building. And I think we could get that, to that $250,000, that $500,000 mark quicker than we think we could. And next year when we come back, and we're addressing this body and other bodies, I hope that we've met that goal. So before I leave the podium, I'm going to ask, are there any questions?
Jim.
There being no questions, I hope that you consider either starting your own fund for yourself or starting something for a family member or something or a cause that you care about. And if you don't want to do that, I just hope that we're able to have you get a donation. Yes, ma'am. Chaka. Yeah, how you doing?
How easy is it to move it from one endowed organization to Prosperity Fund?
I'm not sure. But I understand it's a letter and I don't know if that's happened yet. It's something that we've been researching, but something.
It's happened.
It's happened.
It's happened.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's a letter. It's a letter.
Which we have available.
Okay. All right. Good. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Felder, it is very easy. My email address, which you have, you just email me and I'll make sure that we set up a time to talk. And that goes for anybody in the room. If you'd like more information about moving, we will certainly help you with that process. So we have heard the names of some of the funds that were listed this evening, but all of them were not highlighted, and some of these people are in the room. Some of them are churches who have just gone to their members and asked to start, and they're now endowed. family members, organizations, and so we want to take that time to say thank you for your sacrifice, because philanthropy is a sacrifice, and it's a sacrifice to ask people to make a sacrifice. And here we are in the month of December, Christmas, and we're saying don't buy the toy, don't buy the iPad, create a legacy. So we're going to do that. So if you are here and I mention your fund, if you could just stand, because we'd like to honor you and thank you for your partnership with building the Prosperity Foundation. The Advancement of Haitian Culture Fund. That's Yves, that's your fund, right? Yes. Okay. He's our vice president. For some people who don't want the public eye on them knowing that they are a donor, we also have an anonymous fund, and they are already endowed. So we also acknowledge that. The Black Star Foundation Fund, that's you again, right? The Conaway Fund, which was also mentioned. Conaway Fund, all right. The Howard K. Hill Fund, that's his family fund. I started the Howard K. Hill Funeral Services Funeral Director Fund. And that was important because it was important that we educate Black funeral directors in our community. And so by starting that, we are making sure that we are honoring our culture and our faith and our different religions the way that we know how. So that's why we started the Funeral Services Fund, Scholarship Fund. Then we have the John A. Edmonds Scholarship Fund, housed at Hampton High School. I know we're naming off all of the funds, but I don't know if people know specifically maybe what those funds represent. And my father was John A. Edmonds 4.5 years ago. He passed away, and prior to his passing, I had developed a fund strictly on the word of people having come up to me and say, oh, you're Mr. Edmonds' daughter. If not for your father, I would not have graduated high school. So my father was an assistant principal at Hampton High School. Hampton High School, not known for having a lot of people of color who are teachers or administrators. So he really took a lot of students under his wing and supported them and gave them, you know, that support and that education piece about what it means to graduate. He was a Morgan State graduate, Morgan State University graduate. He was also in the service, and so he knew something about promptness and, you know, just doing what was right. And so I had said if I had $1 for every person that said that to me, I would have $1 million. Not there yet, but as a result, and of course, when he passed, I asked people to make a contribution to the fund, and certainly they did. And then unfortunately, when my brother passed just about 2.5 years ago, we asked the same thing because my brother was a caretaker of my father when he was ill. So again, you know, it actually brings me great comfort, and it's a great healing process for me and the family to know that his legacy is living on, and that we are just actually in the process of sending off monies to a college student this week, hopefully, to so that she can continue on in her education. And I will have you know, I've learned that students do not realize that once they get into college, they need to reach back out to us to let us know that they are registered, that they're attending, and if there is anything else that they need, you know, we can, you know, continue to support them. I'm not on the program. I wasn't supposed to speak, so please forgive me. But I think it's important for people to kind of know what, you know, it means to us, to me personally, but then also, of course, being a part of the Prosperity Foundation, and it's continuing to grow. And, you know, people, like you said, this is that time of year when people do want to give money in some way, and they have said, can I still give? I'm like, absolutely. I direct them to the website. They don't have to tell me how much, and they just want to do that. I mean, neighbors, like I said, people, they still do that. They want to continue now to do that annually, and I'm just grateful for that. Thank you. You're right, we were supposed to talk about what each fund did, so I'm sorry if you want to back up to Yves, to your funds, if you had anything you want to say about the Black Star Foundation or the Advancement of Haitian Culture Fund. Sure, yeah, I'll be brief.
No, don't do that. So
the advancement of Haitian, my family heritage is Haitian on my father's side, and so that advancement of Haitian Culture Fund is a family fund with my father and my brother and a bunch of aunts and uncles, and the goal of that fund was to have capital to support the Haitian community in the United States of America, given the rollbacks of legislation under the Republican administration. And so the timing is obviously very critical with a lot of Haitians who are illegally in this country and are being deported back to a country where there really is no real opportunity to be received well. So that is really the objective of the Haitian Culture Fund, in addition to just supporting, advancing, espousing the beauties of Haitian culture, because a lot of times when we see it, when we're exposed to it in this country, it's always with a negative bent. But there's a lot of beauty in the history of Haiti, in the culture of Haiti, and the people of Haiti. So our goal is to kind of turn that narrative around and really celebrate the culture and the spirit. Black Star Foundation Fund is it's a sister foundation to my business, Black Star Capital, one of my businesses, and the goal is to contribute a percentage of everything that Black Star makes in perpetuity to the foundation for the express purpose of reinvesting that into the Black community. So our goals are to just continue to, David Addams' point, address in our small way the numerous issues of building resources in the community to address the critical needs and challenges of the community. And I'm committing to take a portion of our profits from our for-profit business, put it into a non-for-profit, and put that into the community.
Howard, did you want to talk about your family fund?
Thank you. I haven't quite decided what I wanted for my family fund, but clearly, you know, a lot of research. I started this fund when I was at the Community Foundation. I served on their board for 7 years, and I told the board that I was going to do this, although I didn't necessarily want to do it. Because I said it, I did it. But my intention really is to help to build the corpus of TPF for now. Clearly, my focus is economics in our community. As Mr. Addams said, one of the things that we suffer from is the lack of businesses. Businesses undergird any community. I mean, it's a requirement to have a healthy community. So that's a really, really strong passion of mine, and I'm happy to have Mr. Frank Dixon here tonight, who runs the Black Business Alliance, which is an organization that is designed to help Black businesses thrive. So my fund is here to help the community, clearly in the way of economics, health, and education.
Okay. Is there a representative from the Kareem Fund here this evening? The Kiyama Movement Fund. I know Mike Jefferson is here. Yes.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm all talked out. I spent most of the day arguing with judges and prosecutors, keeping his sister out of jail, and I succeeded on that.
Yeah, right.
I'm working on this brother now. They were tough. They were tough on us, and it was just a long day, so I'm really all talked out. But the Kiyama movement basically is a movement centered around self-improvement of the Black man. And what I did, being that time is of the essence, is that I bought cards with the website, and I encourage everyone to visit the site just to learn a little bit more about Kiyama. Thank you.
Thank you. The Neo Fund. Anyone here from the Mary Robinson Fund? This is a family fund.
Hi, how are you? My name is Claudette, and my fund is for my mom, who died when I was 19 years old. But I can remember her always taking people in from the South. My house was always full with taking people in that came up that needed help in the community. So my fund is to show some respect for my mom. I'm going to be helping young adults with anything they need, like scholarship funds.
The Spirit of Hartford Fund. I didn't see Mr. Harris. We do know the Spirit of Hartford Fund is a fund that was created to uplift those areas in Hartford that that have disparities in them in the areas of education, economics, and health. And so we're transforming the Spirit of Hartford from a mindset of poverty to a mindset of advancement and of movement. So the Spirit of Hartford Fund is growing, and we ask that you would just look them up as well, and we will have more information about them. The St. Andrews Alumni Fund. You talked about it already. You okay? Okay, we're good. And then we have the Varick Memorial AME Zion Church Fund. The pastor is here.
Just to say that it's good to be here, and so our fund is to identify areas that we can improve in our community, especially in the Dixwell community. So we thank you, and you can find out more information about us at www.varickmemorial.org.
All right. Yes.
You want to talk about the Central Endowment just a little bit?
Could you come up and help me with that? I don't want to mess that up.
Here, but just so you understand, the last fund that we have is the Prosperity Foundation Fund, which is the Prosperity Foundation Central Endowment. The goal of that fund is to grow it as big as possible, because as that money is invested and the investments spin off investment returns, those returns, those dividends, those cash flows every year support our staff, our infrastructure, our organization. So the Central Endowment is a critical component fund of the Prosperity Foundation. And over time, as that grows, I mean, the Community Foundation, for example, of Greater New Haven has a Central Endowment in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Mm-hmm. And so every year, the residuals from that hundreds of millions of dollars are multiple $1 million. So they never touch the principal, but the residuals are able to fund their operations. So our goal
and spin-off grants.
And spin-off grants. And so our goal over time is to grow our asset base, so that, to David Addams' point, we have assets that ensure our sustainability, our staying power, our longevity. When we have $100 million in the bank, we will never ever go anywhere. Because we guarantee that we have millions of dollars coming in as revenue every year to pay for Acela, which is very expensive.
No, but I knew the money man could explain it that way, so that's right, so great. But the very, very last fund, your legacy fund. That's the very last fund. I am a proud member of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, oldest black church in the United States of America, and the first African-American business/church to own a piece of property in these United States. Still exists on the corner of 6th and Lombard Street in Philadelphia. 200 years. There was nothing historical built in Philadelphia. 200 years. Yet a monument, a statue of Rocky Balboa, a fictional character, was erected in Philadelphia. Names mean things to people, and legacies mean something. What is the legacy we want to leave behind? As you can see, they're tearing down monuments. And so what's going to happen when all the buildings come down? We can't take a monument to the bank, and there's certainly not scholarships. And when I talk to people and I say, if your scholarship is at a bank, it is simply a checking account. If the bank has not matched you, it's not a fund, it's not a foundation. And so it's our time, it's critical that we take the first step to building our legacies so your name will be here next year. And that's all I have to say.
I'm called back to do the call to action. But I think we pretty much had that, right? But I do want to take just a few moments to honor Acela for her hard work. She put all of also want to, while it wasn't quite on the program, I want to thank my wife Nancy for actually explaining why philanthropy is important. Philanthropy is very, very, very personal. And as you can see, these funds, you're able to express yourself through your funds in perpetuity. In perpetuity, forever.
Right.
You live on forever through your funds. So as Orcella said, what's your legacy? Mr. Addams, thank you.
Thank you.
If we can please. I think we should stand up. Today, my fellow board member, Kathy, called me and kind of got me a little fired up this morning. She was a little confused as to why someone who knew about the Prosperity Foundation's mission, why they would do something like open up a fund somewhere else. This person gave the impression that they were down with what we were doing. So I say that stuff is going to happen all the time, right?
Yes.
We have to understand that the structures, as Mr. Addams said today, the structures are as such that we are dependent upon them. So there's a sense of loyalty to those structures. We have to fight our own thinking when dealing with this foundation, this particular foundation. We have to do what you think is not right, and that is to take care of yourself. We've been conditioned not to take care of ourselves. This is self-care. TPF is self-care. I just want to acknowledge just a few people. Mr. Jefferson, thank you very much for coming. Mr. Morton, funeral director in Bridgeport area, I thank you for coming this evening. Thank you so very much. And there's so many other people that are here. I want to thank each and every single one of you for coming out tonight. I hope that you received something through our messages, through our funds, through the words of wisdom, through Mr. Addams, and some of our testimonials here this evening. And please stay tuned, because we are going to build this foundation and we are going to impact. Understand that this foundation is a Connecticut foundation. It's not reserved for New Haven. This is a Connecticut foundation. So this foundation is designed, actually, this is a model for every other state. So we got a long ways to go, but that should be a word of inspiration for everyone. As Mr. Addams said, people are watching us all across the country. We're making history. God bless you all. Thank you.